Commiserations on the loss. How did you assess the game?
Well, it's important to start off and give credit to Freemantle and congratulate them on an elimination final win. In the end, after being up by so much, it was a death by 1,000 cuts, really. I mean, we went away from some things that had served us well in the early parts of the game, and then Fremantle got a little bit better at some of the things they weren't doing so well. And as much as our guys hung in there and sort of persevered through a period, Josh Dunkley lays those early tackles in the third quarter just to give us some momentum, and the pressure was back up. But ultimately, it's significant disappointment. It's an opportunity missed, and Fremantle have earned a look at another final.
At what point did you sense that the momentum had shifted significantly and you guys were in a bit of trouble?
To keep them to a very little score for most of the first half, and then we, the first couple, were sort of probably gifted to them by some things that we didn't do well. We were taking territory well under pressure. We were making good decisions throughout the course of that early part of the first half, and then they kicked a forward 50 stoppage goal where there was a significant breakdown, which we've been pretty diligent with over the journey. And obviously then, the gap is reduced by a significant amount, and we've lost that edge on the scoreboard. So, going into half-time, it was no secret that we needed to stabilise it. And they just chipped away, and just in the end, they were just the better side for the length of the game.
How do you get your head around the fact that your last two finals now, you've been in a position where that's big feedback, where you've been in a winning position, and then it's been an avalanche of goals from the opposition to take it away from you?
I think it's dangerous comparing this one to last year's grand final. I mean, that was all the adjectives have been attached to it, but tonight was different, and what was the scoreline in the end? How many points did they get in the 70s? And for all the inside 50s for a period, for a lengthy period of the game, we were defending okay, but then it was the kicks across the face of our forward line. It was the breakdowns in that situation and drop a ball in our forward 50 where we opened up the whole open side of the ground, which we planned not to do. That gave them that momentum. So, look, we're chipping away at consistency with decision making and execution with the ball, and that's been as much a problem as the defensive aspect. So we got a lot of that right early, and then we got it incorrect for large periods of the second half, and that's as blunt as I can be. And you can probably find some other things in there, but it's what was it? We're up by 40. It's a significant swing, and it's bloody disappointing.
Did you think your boys got rattled a bit with moments like, from a disciplinary perspective, the fight on the boundary line was 5 of your guys versus 2 of them? They win the clearance, get a goal. Then you had the 50-metre penalty where bloke in the mark tries to replace him, and Lowe gets 2 goals, which ended up being the margin in the end. Did you think they got rattled at different points like that?
Well, I don't think our players got rattled at all, but as you're alluding to, there were significant moments in the game that helped Fremantle win the game. We've been a pretty disciplined side over the journey, but that wanting to go and fly the flag over the boundary in that situation, there's no doubt that the ball was going to be thrown in. So it was a brain fade by all the guys who went in there. There was that, and I mean, obviously the one against Toby, the 50, I didn't see the subtlety in it, where he came from. If it was there, it was there. But I think the more concerning things were the kicks across the face of our forward line and our inability to keep the ball in there in those situations than those. But they're still things that shouldn't have happened.
I can imagine the mood in the room confidence is pretty flat. What's the message? What can you say to them after the game?
Yeah, no, well, it's the $1 million question, isn't it? Because it's difficult to talk after such disappointment. You know, there's a lot of work that goes in by all clubs to try and get an opportunity to play finals, and then, you know, there's an really strong inner belief that we can do better. You know, and the players are sitting there knowing that, you know, at the end of the day, we believe we're more capable than dropping the game tonight. And so there's that disappointment. What do I do with it? I don't. You know, I'm a supportive shroud for the players more than anything, from a life and a professional sport point of view. So it's important that we struck a balance in there. We talked about what we can control, you know, outside of or inside our four walls, inside our inner sanctum, and there are things that we can't. But ultimately, you know, there's a discussion around stimulus for next year and what that means to, you know, propel us into a pre-season, which we like. You know, I like hearing that from the players, you know, because it's difficult to talk after, you know, such a disappointing experience like tonight. But yeah, we'll collect ourselves and we'll process it, say, a little bit more on Wednesday.
Luke, how do you reflect on the year as a whole, and just speaking about the pre-season going into next year? Is there anything you'd pinpoint that you probably didn't get right from the grand final going into this year that you'd maybe like to time again on?
Well, there's lots of aspects, Mitch. You know, I don't think, you know, coming out of the last year, I was hoping that, you know, probably the trauma of the grand final wouldn't have any lasting effects. And it's difficult to understand any sort of magnitude with that, whether it did or whether it didn't. We felt at different stages with one or two of the significant wins we had that we were definitely moving beyond that. But I think, you know, when all of us as individuals, when we think about, you know, what we're capable of, I think we'd all self-reflect and say, you know, I think I can be more consistent. I can be better than what I've been throughout the course, and so that's what we've got to strive for next year. And that's added up to some frustrations here and there. Look, and as I've said, every club, every team's had to deal with interruption, with obstacles. You know, we've played, I think, 40 players again, and we've been disjointed. We haven't had any consistency through roles and through either end of the ground. So, you know, we'll be able to stabilise it. I think it's important to note it's good. I think it's good for us, even though it's a really disappointing outcome. It's probably a good experience for a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 22-year-old probably to play all in our forward line tonight, even though they found it challenging. You know, obviously, Mara and Sam playing their first finals. But to buffer that, you need really an outperforming result from others. And when you consider the kind of game that Marcus and, you know, our skipper had, and say Dunks, you know, and Ryan Gardner, I mean, he was just incredible. You know, he had, I think, 9 or 10 spoils at half time, and, you know, his impression that he had on the game was just significant. So we had some boys who really set a tremendous example, but we haven't had enough for that consistently enough through the year, and I think that's what it will come down to. We obviously tightened up defensively tonight around those uncontested marks. We made sure it didn't happen again, but it didn't work for long enough. So that's going to be our challenge going forward, to be able to do it for longer.
Just on Josh Dunkley, as he weighs up his mind, where does that sit, and what can you do in the next week or two to try and convince him that his future's at the Dogs?
Oh, well, I mean, Sam's talking to Josh's management, and he'll continue to do that. And yeah, look, it's there's some unknowns. I mean, the freer market, as far as the player market, it gets heightened every year. You know, the scope to move clubs, whether it's free agency or or in contract, it's pretty significant. So, we've all got to manage our situation within the ceiling of a salary cap, and Sam does a really good job with that. So, we're desperate. We're hoping that Josh is going to stay, but I can't tell you whether he is or whether he isn't.
Just one other quickly, JJ. Is there same boat with JJ?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of boys who are, in that boat. JJ, Zane. Who else? There might be one or two others. Again, and that's the thing. I mean, the Fremantle are in the same boat. Look, you finish the year and there's some uncertainty around who's going to be here next year. It's just become a reality that's difficult to deal with or process culturally, but I think it's going to be more and more normalised as the years go by. So we just got to get used to that. I can tell you absolutely that the relationships are really strong. So I think if there's a reason to leave the club, it might be for opportunity or and obviously the short lifespan of an AFL footy. You've got to make hay financially, as much as you can, and we understand that.
Just on your improvement for next year, just a little bit on Toby McLean getting back to AFL level today, and particularly in that first half, what he was able to provide.
Yeah, he made an impression on the game, Toby, and it's a long way back, as you know, from an ACL, and an important role player tonight. And but yeah, look, I think as the night went on, our forward line probably became a little bit dysfunctional. We weren't scoring, but we couldn't keep the ball in our front third for long enough. And but it was good to see Tobes come back. He's been playing some reasonable state league footy, and he's a very team-oriented player. So he deserved to come in, and he did that. And it's a good platform to work into next year from. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.